Does using digestive enzymes on a long-term basis interfere with your body's ability to produce these enzymes naturally? No. Great question, Eileen. It does not. Absolutely does not interfere. Using enzymes is very safe. It does not lower your body's ability to make your own enzymes at all. Let's see. So somebody's asking about another lab. You know, I don't like to mention bad things about different labs, but you know, the only lab I recommend to identify gluten sensitivity is genetic testing. There's some other commercial labs that are out there that claim to measure IgG or IgA antibodies against other parts of grains or other glutens. And look, those tests are, in my experience, are highly inaccurate and highly misleading. But gluten sensitivity genetic testing is not. And if you're positive with gluten sensitivity genes, and you should avoid all grains. No questions, no ifs, ands, or buts, at least not in my experience or opinion. I had, Robert wants to know, I had the gastric bypass surgery 3 years ago, definitely malabsorption. Will have take vitamins the rest of my life. Yes, yeah, no question there, but that's true. You may not have to take massive quantities of vitamins the rest of your life, but you will absolutely want to measure your nutrition status on a 6-month interval basis for the rest of your life to make sure you're not coming into malabsorption in a big way. Because what happens is people let it go. They've had their gallbladder out for 6 or 7 years. They've had their stomach stapled for a number of years, and it builds. The malnutrition builds, and it compounds, and it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And the longer it's there, the greater the risk. So periodic testing of nutritional status is very critical in somebody who's had surgical removal of an organ. Can you supplement amylase, say a lipo, in mouth to swish around? Danielle is asking, can you supplement amylase? Yeah, you can supplement, and that's just a digestive enzyme. I don't know what you mean by say a lipo, but you can definitely supplement with enzymes before you eat your meals, and amylase certainly that is available commercially that you can purchase. What causes high arsenic? Eat lots of organic chicken and seafood. So depending on what your organic chicken eats, a lot of organic chicken are fed organic grains that can be high in arsenic. And so you have to look back at where the source of the food the chickens is coming from, because heavy metals transfer from the meat of the animal into the human. Question about the low FODMAP. What about the low FODMAP diet? What about it? Like, what do you mean, what about the low FODMAP diet? Is it a good diet? Is it a not good diet? Low FODMAP diet is a very generalized diet that cuts out a numerous quantity of foods in individuals who have very poor digestion. It can be helpful, but not everybody needs to go that in depth in terms of their move, with diet change. Is there harm in letting a small ventral hernia go? Kristen, I wish I could answer that question directly, but what is a small? Small is a relative term. Without actually seeing it, and without knowing your history, it's really hard for me to be a judge of something like that. That's really more of something you want to speak with your doctor about. What can you take for fat malabsorption? I think I mentioned that earlier. Lipogest is what I would recommend, and I believe we even put a link up to that as well. I lost my appendix 50 years ago. Does the appendix have anything to do with malabsorption? I don't seem to have any health issues. Not so much malabsorption. What we're learning about the appendix, Mark, is that it's like a storage basket or like a rain check for your good gut bacteria. So the appendix stores a lot of your, we'll call them probiotics, but your microbiome, a lot of your reserve microbiome is actually stored in your appendix. And so removing it makes you more susceptible to disruption of your microbiome should you take things like an antibiotic or other drugs or other chemicals that might also act as antibiotics. Let's see here. Sorry, but my stools smell like red roses. I like that. Thanks for injecting the humor. I take an antibiotic called doxycycline for acne. Yeah, if you're taking an antibiotic for acne, you need to ask the question, why do you need an antibiotic for acne? Acne is a skin disease, and generally it grows from the inside out. So there's a problem with something internally, and you shouldn't need, my point is you shouldn't need an antibiotic to control acne growth on the skin if your diet's dialed in and you're doing the right things with nutrition. Let's see, Bhupender's asking, what's a way to buy our products if you live in Australia? I can't make purchases. It's only limited to Canada and America. One of the only ways that we can right now at this point in time is that we ship to Australia is when I'm working with a client directly. So if I'm working with a client directly who's living in Australia, we actually, not through Gluten Free Society, but through our clinic, we'll ship things to that client. So that's really one of the only ways I know to get Gluten Free Society products, overseas at the moment. We're working on some distributorships that we may see coming online in the future, but right now we just don't have them. Let's see. On an ion Genova test, all fatty acids are high. Is there a genetic reason for this? No, but I also don't trust an ion Genova test to measure fatty acids. It's just not a great read on measuring for fatty acids. So not the best methodology for testing, in my opinion. Let's see, Yesenia, a gluten-free child with burning feet every night lasting 12 to 15 hours. What can be done to provide relief? So you mentioned gluten-free child, but is the child true gluten-free, grain-free? So that would be one element to consider. The other would be get that child tested. It says burning feet is a neurological, generally it's a neuropathy. And there are a few things nutritionally that can cause burning foot syndrome. It's very painful, but B5 is one of the most common, B5 deficiency. Also B12 deficiency and folate deficiency and B1 deficiency, vitamin B1 deficiency, all those things can cause a burning foot neuropathy to occur. Thoughts on high-dose vitamin D, thoughts on human milk oligosaccharides. I think human milk oligosaccharides are great. I think high-dose vitamin D used in the proper way is fantastic. I think abused and used improperly isn't fantastic. Mike is asking, can I take Lipogest even if I have a gallbladder? You can. Some people struggle with gallstones or have sluggish bile production, and so something like Lipogest can be supportive and helpful. Gloria is asking, I have sarcoidosis. I had COVID twice, had blood work done, and my vitamin D level was 9. So knowing my doctor told me to take vitamin D, but I tried low dose. But on my 5th day, I started having a pain around my kidney area. I'm sure it was the vitamin D. It may have been. What you would want to do, Gloria, if you were going to take any amount of higher level of vitamin D, is really monitor your serum calcium level, because that's really the risk with sarcoidosis. It's that serum calcium level can go up, and that can create a greater risk for stones. It can create a greater risk too for cardiovascular events. So you just have to monitor it carefully. The other way you can get vitamin D where it shouldn't really have a major impact is just good old-fashioned sunshine if you tolerate the sun. I know it's harder to do right now in the winter, but some people actually use tanning beds in winter months, not to tan, not to go in and lavishly tan your body, but it's just a few minutes of exposure a couple of times a week can go a long way toward naturally improving the vitamin D production from the cholesterol in your skin. So Cindy's asking about, what if your vitamin D is too high? Mine was almost 2,000. If you're talking about serum values, and if you're supplementing with any B12 at all, you're always going to have high serum values. Serum values are not an accurate indicator for vitamin B12 absorption into your cells. So if you're monitoring your serum vitamin B12 to ascertain whether or not you're taking too much B12, it's the wrong test. You're approaching it in the wrong way. You've got to look at intracellular vitamin B12, functional outcome vitamin B12 testing to know. Tara's asking, does your book discuss how to heal fat and protein malabsorption? My book doesn't go specifically at, hey, chapter 3 on healing from fat and protein malabsorption. My book goes into whole body healing. So, I would encourage you to read it, because I think if you apply it, I think, anybody that applies it, that especially that has a gluten issue, is going to take themselves a long way toward healing any kind of malabsorption problem caused as a result of food. what's the best daily supplement? I mean, my favorite, I'm biased, but I designed it. It's called Ultra Nutrients, and so it's my favorite daily supplement. I've talked about this, April, in the past. There are supplements that I recommend. We have a grouping of supplements. If you go to our shop on Gluten Free Society, but it's called the Gluten Free or the Gluten Essentials bundle. Maybe we can put that link up, but a multivitamin, omega-3, probiotic, all what I would consider to be essential baseline supplements if you're just getting started. Some ways to increase stomach acid. Number one, you got to eat well. Your stomach can produce acid, but if you're not eating well or if you're doing something that inhibits it, it's not going to make stomach acid. You can increase acid. What some people do to help aid digestion is take a little bit of apple cider vinegar before a meal, because it has a mild acidic effect. The other thing you can do, we have something called ultra acid, which is a supplemental acid that you can take. But if you're trying to increase your ability to produce stomach acid, you first have to identify what's causing any kind of damage to your stomach and address and deal with that. And hopefully see from there your stomach be able to heal, repair, and recover and start making stomach acid in adequate quantities on its own. If you have a pancreatic insufficiency and don't tolerate enzymes, you have to ask, in my experience, a lot of people that don't tolerate enzymes, it's for a number of different reasons. A lot of popular enzyme products, Michelle, contain rice powder in them. And I've seen this time and time again where people are on an enzyme formula with rice in it, on an enzyme formula with corn in it, and they think they don't tolerate enzymes, but they actually do. They just have to get on a true gluten-free type of enzyme, and they find that they tolerate it really well. Mary Beth asking about kombucha. Yeah, I think kombucha is junk food. I don't recommend it because it's basically water with sugar and alcohol, and they have to sweeten it, otherwise you wouldn't want to drink it. But there's too much sugar left in kombucha, and there's alcohol as a byproduct. It's just not a healthy food to consume. I know it's highly popular right now, but it's just not a healthy food. My B12 is high, 1800. How am I absorbing that, but yet magnesium is low after taking megadoses of mag citrate? So again, Denise, it depends on how you were tested. It's a big issue in testing of nutrients. And somebody asked the question, is a naturopathic doctor or a functional medicine doctor, are they good? Could they handle malabsorption if I go and see a doctor like that? And again, it's the same thing. What kind of doctor is best to measure nutritional status? It's not the type of doctor, it's the nutritional education and the understanding of cellular biology that the doctor has. If they're running the wrong types of tests to do the measurement, tests that are inaccurate or that are misleading, you're going to get really confused really, really quick. And I would suggest, Denise, that that's probably what's happened to you. Again, your B12 is high. It's most likely high in your serum, which is no way to monitor B12 levels. If your magnesium is low, how did they measure that magnesium? I don't know. Did they measure it in your red blood cell? Did they measure it in your white blood cell? Did they measure it using lymphocyte proliferation? Like, what was the mechanism of the measurement? Because it's hard for me to give you a really distinct answer without having that information. Again, this is where a lot of doctors, in my experience and opinion, fail to properly address nutrition because they don't know enough about the technology that they're using or the testing methodologies. And so they're just measuring something for the sake of measuring it without understanding the nuance. Yeah, so just some commentary about people not getting, as I talked about earlier, people never getting any kind of counseling in nutrition prior to a surgical procedure. How do you get your nutritional status measured? It in a lot of different ways. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to measure. It depends on which nutrient we're trying to measure. We're working on a direct-to-consumer measurement where we measure multitudes of different nutrients, the main ones. All the essential nutrients. I've mentioned that before. We're coming to fruition with that, and hopefully we'll have that available to folks here very, very soon. But it's a type of intracellular functional outcome analysis, very, very much what I use in my clinic, but till now it's not really been available direct to consumer, and that's what we've been working on because The problem is, as most of you know, you go to your doctor and ask them to measure it, and they don't know what they're doing. They didn't study nutrition. They don't have an expertise. They tell you it's not important. They dismiss it as unimportant. They look at you like you're crazy, and then you have no recourse, and you have no way to actually get it truly measured. And so that's part of why my team and I have been really working diligently on trying to make this available to you folks. So just be patient with me. I promise we're going to have it ready, if not by the end of this quarter, but by the end of the year for sure. I mean, we're there. We're this close. Will enzymes work if taken in the middle of the meal? Yes, they still work. Even if you forgot to take them before the meal and you take them in the middle of the meal, they're still going to give you some enzymatic activity, and they're still going to help support your digestion. Somebody's asking, do I suggest taking Ultra Digest if you no longer have a gallbladder? You can take it. There are fat digesting enzymes in Ultra Digest, but again, I really recommend, without a gallbladder, I really recommend Lipogest because the issue with the gallbladder removal is going to be more about bile and less about enzymes. Remember, your enzymes are produced by your intestine. They're also produced by your pancreas. So the gallbladder itself is not as key as far as the enzyme production. That's more your bile production. Best way to treat chronic constipation is to identify what's causing the chronic constipation. Michelle, I know that sounds like a workaround answer and it doesn't give you clarity, but a lot of times the constipation is as a result of a number of different factors. What I would encourage you to do is, I did an entire show, it's called How to Poop, right? And if you go back and review that show, it's about an hour and a half long, but it might give you some better clues and insights than what I can go into right this moment on resolving a constipation issue. What should I feed my chickens to keep them from feeding them grain? Chickens can eat grain. I think it's where you're sourcing your grain. If we're talking about heavy metals, as I was mentioning earlier, but your chickens shouldn't have a staple diet of only grain, and that's where a lot of farmers, in my opinion, go wrong. Your chickens should graze. They should eat insects. They should eat mealworms. They should eat things like flax meal. They can eat chia. I mean, chickens can eat a lot of things beyond grain that are not going to necessarily be contaminated with heavy metal, and you really just have to investigate all those. I mean, that's what we feed ours. We feed ours, when we do feed, we're in Texas, so they can graze year round because it's hot. It's that hot down here. But if I live further north, I probably would use a lot more flax meal. I probably would use a lot more mealworm in my food preparation, but I would also use some organic grain. Remember, chickens by default can eat grain as a species. Their GI tracts are designed to process that. It's just quantity and it's quality as well. And one of the problems with heavy metals in grain is predominantly it's rice, not so much where you get heavy metal. Rice, wheat is another one, but you really want to look at with your chicken meal. You want to look at something ideally that's wheat, rice, and preferably soy free, because that's where you get a lot of the contamination issue when it comes to chicken feed. I have celiac and malabsorption. How can I help get the correct amount of nutrients? Stephanie, number one, start with a true gluten-free diet, not the traditional gluten-free diet that you probably were guided toward when you got your celiac diagnosis. And if you don't know what that is, let's put a link up for Stephanie. We have a free 14-hour masterclass, Stephanie, that you can take to understand gluten better. A lot of people I see that have a celiac diagnosis, they've been told everything wrong. They've been told everything to how to go gluten-free the total wrong way, and they continue to struggle with issues until they learn what's in this master class. And again, you can take it. It's absolutely free. It's about 14 hours long. You do have to commit your time to getting the education, but we're going to put a link up just for you, Stephanie, on the Glutenology Masterclass.
I'm Dr. Peter Osborne, founder of Gluten-Free Society.
Red blood cells are always low. How
can I increase this? I'm also anemic. No Grain, No Pain.
What red blood cells
you might recognize me from my appearances on Fox, PBS, Netflix, and many other nationally recognized publications.
It depends on why they're low.
Super passionate about
a lot of times I see red blood cells being low as a result of vitamin B12 deficiency, folate deficiency can cause
the
it.
ultimate master class on going
So those are
gluten-free.
just two places, simple places
more than
to
just
start.
a tutorial
The key
on
would
how
be
to
to
go on a
identify
gluten-free
why they're
diet.
low.
It is
Again,
jam-packed
there are a
with
number of reasons why they
14
could be low. You might have a
broken
hemolytic
down into
anemia where your red blood cells are low because they're breaking open too prematurely and they're not living out their 3 to 4 month lifespan, and that could be a vitamin E deficiency or a vitamin C deficiency. So it just depends. I wish it were a simple question and I could give you an exact answer, but it's varied. All right, let's see here. Somebody's shouting dinner time. Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's 7:25. My stomach was growling, and I think you were reading my mind, Sue. It is, it's dinner time, and we've gone over, and I've answered a lot of questions. There's a lot more. Look, I want to do my best to answer your questions. Do me a favor. If you've got questions that you'd like me to answer that are just burning a hole in your mind and you have a desire to learn more, you can also shoot those questions over to me and just email me at glutenology@gmail.com if you've got questions. And again, next week we'll be back for another live Q&A session every Monday night at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you are new to the show and you want to get the email to the link so that you can come and attend on Monday nights, make sure you go over to glutenfreesociety.org and sign up there for our newsletter. That is the number one way we can prevent censorship, is that you're on my newsletter, where I know for a fact that the notifications are coming to you. YouTube constantly censors us. Facebook constantly censors us because truth is lies and lies is truth in today's climate. So if you want uncensored information, you want to get access to my brain every Monday night, make sure you sign up for my newsletter over at glutenfreesociety.org. Look, I wish you all an excellent week. We'll see you back next Monday for another episode of Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. Have a great evening.
Hey, if you've got a functional medicine or health question that you'd like me to answer for you, make sure you send me an email, glutenology@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to create a video answer just for you. Have a great day.